Forbes India presents Freshworks Tech Shots, the new CX.
Hello and welcome to Forbes India presents Freshworks Tech Shots, the new CX. Now, this series is going to look at how changing customer expectations are transforming how companies invest in CX to not just grow but turn their customers into fans. Now, in fact, the topic of discussion with this gathering of leaders that we have with us is the future of customer service, transforming CX for success, where we will be bringing you stories from the trenches from a wide variety of sectors, from agri-tech to health tech to insure-tech, marketing services, technological enablement, and the list just keeps going on. So let's get it started with our first speaker who joins us. Ranjit Kumar, who's the CX head at Ninja Cart, is with us. It's one of India's leading agri-tech companies. Now, agri-tech is a space which is very close to me since I've had some experience in that. So I get to see the challenges that go along with it, and of course the joy of solutions, the ecstasy of solutions that come about. When we look at what we are trying to do, what you're trying to do, Ranjit, is to take the middleman out. And as part of your business, you're trying to make sure that the farmer's produce directly reaches to retailers. It's a great idea, but trying to implement that involves a very complex machinery. Now, this is a question I would usually look at asking a B2C firm, but I want to get a B2B perspective on this, because when we look at the rapid evolution of changing customer expectations, when we look at personalized recommendations, proactive service, so on and so forth, the question is, how do you map those expectations and look at turning your customers into fans? So for a sector which has been so analog for so long, how do you use the power of technology to turn your customers into fans? Let's get your perspective on this.
In India, it's very complex, right? Every 300 kilometers you travel, the language changes. And the other problem what we have is our customer segment. If you see, 30 to 40% of users doesn't have a smartphone, right? So that's what we thought. We thought that, let us be a detective and find out, what our customers love and how we have to speak with them. So we use various technologies. First of all, the app, what we have is, the customers can place their orders directly with us. They don't have to go to the nearest mandi and, in the early morning, removing all the middlemen, they can get in the doorstep delivered. Even a pushcart guy, right? He can get the veggies delivered into where he's selling this produce. His vegetables. So what we did is, we dissected into two segments. One of the smartphone users and non-smartphone users. For the smartphone users, we use WhatsApp as a medium to take orders, and even they can place your orders via the app. The non-smartphone users is a biggest challenge, because all these players, right, they really wanted to check the price before ordering that SKU. So what we do is we let our customers proactively, dial. We let the customers dial proactively. We see who are active users, call them directly, tell them, hey, this is the current rate today. Would you like to place an order? Moreover, we also send a lot of promotions via WhatsApp to attract the customers and place an order with us. But it's very diverse. The customers prefer a lot of personalization because they are the new explorers, and it's a very competitive segment. A lot of players are offering various services. So Ninja Cart should definitely, what we do is we put the technology in the front to solve all these problems and make our customers as loyal fans.
All right. We've threaded the needle right now, so we are going to make sure that the tapestry flows in this August gathering. So let me come to Arpit Agarwal, who is the head of CX of Tata Click, a leading e-commerce player, to lend in his views. The question to you is, when we look at a typical customer journey these days, it's 5 stages, which is awareness, consideration, acquisition, experience, and loyalty. So when we look at these 5 stages, in the first 2 stages, your brand might not have a direct interface with the customer, because search platforms and comparison platforms come into play there. While the rest 3 of the stages, you can have a direct sort of experience. So the question I want to ask you is, how do you make sure that you're generating value in each of these 5 stages, considering the broad repertoire of products that you have, whether it's fashion, apparel, luxury, so on and so forth, and the different consumer cohorts which visit your service and offering? How do you make sure that the value at all stages is delivered? Your thoughts on this, Arpit?
I think I would like to open with 2 thoughts. One is customer journey is not a linear process. So we should not look at it from the perspective of that while there are many journeys across the stages of the funnel, we have to look at how do we optimize these journeys maybe at a micro journey level. So for example, if it's a consideration stage and a customer is looking at a certain set of products, then we need to look at how do we overall elevate the awareness about those products from a consumer psyche standpoint. This could be via social media posts, influencers. This could be via targeted communications because we have the browsing history. So utilizing that plethora of information and optimizing the micro journeys is the key in ensuring that there is an omni-channel experience irrespective of which channel a customer is exploring the brand. Another aspect I would like to talk about is that personalization or targeted communications come into play at all the 5 journeys, and especially from a purchase to a loyalty journey where customers are looking at personalized offers, personalized recommendations. I think one of the biggest use cases that we have seen is we run a HNI CRM program wherein we work with our top 1% customers on a regular basis, and they have a dedicated RM as well. You won't believe, while these customers make big life decisions on a day-to-day basis, they want buying assistance to the smallest possible level. So they want to ask the RM or the expert, okay, I am wanting to buy an X product, recommend me products. So that is the level of dependency that we have amongst customers, and they utilize these offerings very well, and that is how you win the customer.
Fantastic. And these micro journeys are something I will explore in the conversation as we go along. But we've had agri-tech, e-commerce. One of my other favorite spaces is health tech. So let me bring in Jagjit Singh, COO of Care Tech 24. Jagjit, when I look at healthcare, what a world of difference, especially from a pandemic perspective, right? Pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, there's been, in a sense, retailization of healthcare because we've gotten so used to the digital revolution that we've seen across and the experience that it has brought with it, the ease of use. We expect the same in any sector that we go in. So when we look at nursing services, tell us about how that space has transformed and how customer experience is being viewed by you and your company.
Yeah, in case of healthcare, I think it's a lot more complicated. Now that we are still coping up with technology, I'll say before COVID, the compliance was not that great. The people were not that very inclined towards that. But after COVID, people have been, the customers have been coming in that journey. Otherwise, before that, healthcare was all manual. When I say manual, the interactions have to be manual. Because your customers are with you for a couple of months, so you'll have to be interacting with them in that way. But after COVID, being a healthcare and being a health tech company, we are still in a hybrid model, I'll say. We are still not a very, very tech model. So we are splitting our journey with the first part where the technology supports the customers, and then the dependency still stays on the human beings. So I'll say we are still struggling with that in terms of technology being adapted, but technology is coming up as a very back-end support for us, okay, where you have everything from sales to the journey where the customer or the patient stays with you for a couple of months. You have everything on track with that. Everyone should, your care managers, we call them care managers who are directly interacting with the patients. Your care managers should have all the data towards that. So technology supports in that case. But if I talk about who will take the kind of responsibility for that, that is still manual for healthcare. How do you manage that in these terms?
All right. Now that was health tech. Let's see what the insurers have to say. We have with us Jalpa Momaya, who's the head of CX for digital at ICICI Lombard, among India's largest general insurance players. And Jalpa, when I look at the insurance sector, you're the sharpest end of the innovation spear when I talk in this context, because during the pandemic, a lot of changes in the industry came about, and a lot of the business models transformed because of great customer feedbacks into presenting new solutions and so on and so forth. But I want to talk about the micro journeys which Arpit brought up as a talking point, right? Because when you look at customer journey, it's gone from singular to plural, and it has, in a sense, every step is 20 steps on its own. So when we look at the complexity which is there about customer journeys, how do you make sure that you are addressing the weak points in your value chain?
So the best part of it at ICICI Lombard was we were digitally ready even before pandemic. they had culled out a separate vertical for digital, and this was bought in 2015. It was conceptualized, and 2017 is when they culled out organization and organization.
You were like Gujarat Titans in the first IPL.
Yes. So it was an organization and organization to give a proper focus on the digital assets. This was already culled out. So by the time pandemic hit India, we were kind of ready with a lot of our journeys. Coming to the customer journeys, we still have a lot of things, a lot of leadership focus in terms of innovation, in terms of adapting new technologies, in terms of trying some proof of concepts, checking how the results are, adapting to the new things. So that has helped us a lot to be digitally ready. In terms of giving the customer experience, a lot of focus is given on easing out the customer journey. Although insurance is a lot of regulatory driven industry as a whole, keeping those regulatory points in mind, we still have a lot of focus in terms of how do we ease out
So
the
what are the
customer
weak
journeys.
points still remaining in your opinion? I mean, when we look at the value chain, since you're a highly regulated sector,
Right.
the idea is you want to be agile, you want to be nimble, but you're also supposed to be compliant with the data that you are working with. So in the value chain that you're looking at, still some of the weak points that you think that need to be addressed?
So there is a lot of documentation which is required even today, which if you think from a customer standpoint, they would still want a lesser documentation. They would still want a easier processes. So some of the feedbacks which we continuously get from the customers and then pass it on to IRDAI in terms of easing out the journeys for the customer, especially on the documentation front. There are certain stringent regulations also which do not allow us go beyond the boundaries even if we have to serve the customer well. So we are just trying to find alternate ways. How do we help the customer and still be compliant on the regulation?
All right, I'll be watching what the insurance space does very closely from here on and seeing
Sure.
how things have moved forward to make sure that
Right.
customers are smiling at the end of the day. Great perspectives so far shared from a variety of sectors when we look at agri-tech or health tech or insurance or e-commerce. Let me get in the marketing minds to see what they have to say. Preetham Venki, CDO at DDB Mudra, is with one of India's largest integrated marketing agencies. He is at the right vantage point to get an answer for this question. It's not about marketing, but it is about hyper-personalization.
Everything is about
Everything is marketing.
everything is marketing.
Just leave it to the marketers to come up with the best punchlines. But Preetham, let's look at this question of scale, because we all want to do great things, but sometimes it can happen that you look at what you're doing and the operations that you look at, and you're thinking, hey, 100,000 users, great, but suddenly some black swan event comes in and there you are at 1 million users, million MAUs, or maybe even million DAUs. Now, in that context, I want to get your viewpoint on how do you manage scale when we talk about hyper-personalization for consumers, where you make each consumer cohort feel special, make them feel that the brand really knows you. And since, Archie's has just released, how do you make sure Betty and Veronica are both happy with Archie?
All right, so I'm going to try and respond to that in two parts. So the first part is, how do you address scale? So typically what happens is when you're trying to address scale, you look at 3 Ps, right? How do you update the people? How do you actually upgrade the processes? And what are the kind of tools and products you're going to use in order to make that happen? But there is a fourth part which most people miss out, which is how do you bring the cognitive biases and the psychology associated with the interaction, and how do you utilize in order to create a great experience? At its core, most people would understand that brands are about the service that you provide. What we call as experience is nothing but a service at its very, very core level. So if you keep the service-orientedness mindset at the center of it, then you will be able to see how you can use the psychology element in order to deliver that better. But having said that, you look at the factor of 10. One of the things that we noticed with one of our very close brands, we've been working with them for about 10 years, which is Royal Enfield, is that whenever there is a factor of 10x, we've obviously shifted dramatically all the 4 Ps. Right? So that means from product to process to people to the psychology. Why that's important is because not only are you building, but now we've got a trend record where after 3 or 5 years, we know exactly what is the growth that's expected. So what internally we would typically call as Web 4.0 is nothing but 4th phase of that journey of growth. Now, when that happens much more rapidly. The intent is obviously to try and do 10x in 1 month time or 2 month time, right?
But what
That's
about
you
black
mean.
swan events? If I had to take the Indian cricket example, for the Indian cricket team, they won 10 matches in a row. There was a certain plan, but out comes Australia, out of the textbook, so to say. For these out of the textbook events that happen, how do you plan to still make sure that your hyper personalization credentials are still strong? In a sense, your core is still strong. From the 4 Ps that you mentioned, how do they account for black swan events?
So most of the time you can't, right? Let's be fair. And that's why when you notice during COVID, a lot of the services just faltered. And the reverse happened as well post-COVID, where because of the kind of stress that is there on the labor force, you again have a deterioration of service, so to speak. A lot of the organizational brands weren't as good as back in 2019 because of that deterioration. So how do you essentially tackle that? The fact is that you start with psychology first. Why that's important is because that gives you that little bit of a runway for you to be able to still build a great experience with the communication lens to a large extent, and making sure that the brand context is brought in much early before you start adapting the remaining 3. The reason is the other 3 do take time. If I have to move from a very small tool which caters to about 100,000 or a million users, at least from a CRM standpoint, I want to move to a tool which actually handles a 10x of that. That's not an overnight journey. That's going to take you at least 6 months, and it's going to take another 12 months for somebody on the people side to get trained and then get ready with it. So almost always attack how you can use the psychological elements of those interactions to your benefit to a large extent. So that's where the CX team comes in and thinks about how they can build a really great stopgap.
Absolutely. Know the sentiment of the customer and then kind of plan accordingly. All right. Since we are talking about the 4 Ps, one of the 4 Ps, as you mentioned, product besides people and process, let me bring in the great enablers in this space to understand how from the product ecosystem, what are the options that come in. And we have with us Ambika Sultania, who's the business head of CX and CRM for the India and SAARC region at Freshworks. Ambika, when we look at this scale question, right? Now, Preetham had addressed it from the perspective of managing scale from 4 Ps. And in that context, the minimization of disruption comes, because while we all scale, the question is how do you minimize that disruption from a CX perspective? So what does Freshworks bring to the table?
Sure. So, as we rightly heard from everybody, right? I mean, Ranjit, Arpit, and everybody spoke about this. I think the expectations are really changing, right? I mean, in today's world, something which was acceptable, a few years ago, I think most of the organizations are not accepting all of those things because they want to just provide a different experience altogether to their customers, right? And the experience has to be, like as Ranjit called out, I mean, it has to be in the same language that they prefer. It has to be across the same channel that they prefer. And the time to act has to be as fast as possible, right? So these are definitely the need of the hour today, and all of these have to be catered to while the businesses are scaling, and that's not a easy task, right? What we then recommend to do is that we always would like to automate as much as possible, just so that to your point, I mean, the workload that an agent really has, right? How can we supercharge the productivity of this agent? How do we actually ensure that he has a 360-degree view of his customers, just so that he understands where this customer is in his customer lifecycle journey with my brand, and then I'm able to provide that experience back to the customer? How do we ensure that chatbots are able to deflect about 80% of my queries, just so that the number of queries that are coming to my agents are reduced? And how do we ensure that we provide the right data and insights to our leaders to make that data-driven decisions, right? These are all the different things that we are delivering, and there are solutions that we are actually bringing up. The customer service suite, which really combines the conversational support with the robust ticketing, is an example of how we are really tackling the scale that is required by all brands.
In a sense, you're the coach to the players, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right. And now, speaking about coaching, let's take that enablement aspect forward. Vimal Limbard, who is the global CEO and head of CX at Tata Technologies, is here to take some of the points which Ambika mentioned, especially the 360-degree customer view. Now, that's the holy grail for companies, right? Because the insights help you as a decision maker know what's your step forward. But for the viewing audience who wants to get a sense of, how do you build an effective, unified customer view in a way that it benefits both the brand and the customer? What are the best practices that you would recommend?
So thanks for the nice introduction. Yeah. So as we have heard from Arpit and from the insurance companies as well, we talked about like 4 Ps. Right, and there is the another aspect is actually the 3 Cs as well, right? Connected, consistent, and continuous experience, which we need to give it to the end customer. Now, when we talk about these 3 Cs, every product industries are actually tracking the customer journey, right? And each customer journey is actually going to fall to 4 different verticals, right? One is actually right from the awareness, consideration, purchase, and after sales. In after sales, again, how you are actually making sure that the customer is retained by one or other freebies, kind of a good tangible, intangible benefits you are giving, right? So as she has talked about, like the customer 360 degree. Now product are also talking to you in terms of a data, right? When I talk like a product is actually the connected vehicles. When I say the household are also connected nowadays, right? So there was mammoth of data which was available to us where the customer was actually browsing the data, browsing some the interest need. Nowadays, actually, the connected vehicle is also giving you the data, right? So it's more towards like the customer 360 degree. More than that, it is now actually trying to turn up customer 360 degree plus your vehicle 360 degree as well, or the product 360 degree. Now, the beauty is like the post-pandemic, everyone went to a digital transformation, right? What everyone has done, actually, they have created so many the channels where the customer can reach out to the retailers, to the manufacturers, or to the OEMs. And the beauty is that you are not able to tackle, or you are not able to analyze the enough amount of the behavioral kind of an analysis out of that. And again, the vehicles are also, or the product is also connected to each other, right? So what we need to do is actually you need to integrate the partner ecosystem. Whatever channels which you have established external to your ecosystem, IT ecosystem, you need to make sure that you have to have your integration channels inbuilt so that actually you create, we call this as an CDP, the Common Customer Data Platform, which is actually, you can say this kind of a data lake, or there are so many other tools available to make sure that you identify the unique customer, be it reaches to the Tata Click, be it goes to the some other the retailer shops, right? And you need to make sure that this customer is actually touching all the footprints, and you create a unique experience from that particular customer. And setting the analytics on top of that is actually kind of a recommendation engine through the various machine learning or AI engines which will be running on top of that.
Make sure your service data lake is pristine enough so that everyone can visit the lake and sort of take whatever they want from it, right, in a simplistic sense. But we have covered 4 Ps. We have covered 3 Cs. Let's see what more acronyms we can bring to the table. Vikram Singh is here with us. He's the head of CX of PVR Inox. I've been meaning to see a movie. Let's see if I can become his customer soon enough. But taking forward some of the points which Vimal had mentioned, for that service data lake to be useful, at the end of the day, your organization needs to be tied well, where the data is coming from all sources in an organic manner, where it is rightfully processing and giving you the decision makers the right kind of insights. But the challenge that comes about is the problem of a fragmented architecture. So Vikram, your thoughts on how that can be prevented? In a sense, how do you bring the organization together in the goal of having effective CX, rather than having a band-aid solution by saying, hey, we'll have a CX team, they will look at it, and all the other teams will maybe have brainstorming sessions with them once in a week, and then that's it. What are your thoughts on this?
Thank you for having me here. But I mean, it's a really interesting fact, and CDP is the way to go. There is no other way. We have multiple partners with us from where we get data, whether it is Book My Show, Paytm, and other aggregators also. We faced this challenge a long time back. I think 6-7 years back, we faced this challenge. Some part of the data was completely meaningless, and hence there is no analytics that can be done, no marketing, and no customer service. So to enable all of this, we And as an organization, we decided, and I think 6-7 years back, that CX is not going to be a team. CX will be the way of life. And when we changed our mission statement for this, everyone started to work towards it.
Give us an example. How did you manage that?
Sure. So, typically how the organizations are built or were built, not now, but what, sales people are selling stuff. Marketing people are marketing stuff. They are not connected. So marketing team is talking about something else. Sales is going and pitching for something else. And when something goes wrong, it is the customer service team who is supposed to fix without having any idea what was sold or what was marketed. This was a typical problem in most of the companies. But now that we have powerful products like CDPs or instant messaging, IS is one of the very good tool which pushes personalized, hyper-personalized offers or information to the consumer almost on the real-time basis. So what we did was, and we realized that it all comes down to the data. If your data at backend is not really well sorted and integrated, you won't be able to make customer 360. And unless you can't make 360, you won't be able to make any meaningful data out of it or any meaningful decision out of it. So, for example, if let's say my customer service team is servicing one of the consumer, and he is looking for a return or for a refund, let's say, I don't know what is the customer profile, whether I should give him a refund or not. Is he genuine or not? How many transactions he has done in the past? Is he a high value consumer? Should I give him something extra? Should I make his life?
Looking at CLTV
Yes.
and making those decisions.
So, and likewise for sales, this data is similarly useful whether I should go to this consumer. Does this consumer even have the need for my product? So, we started to do all of that, and that's where we built a very powerful ecosystem, and somewhere close to 12 different systems are integrated with our CDP, and we make decisions on the fly.
And all these changes came about post-pandemic?
Post-pandemic.
Post-pandemic.
Yeah.
All right. Since we spoke of the pandemic, sure. I mean, the movie business did get impacted, but of course, the healthcare business was also one of its biggest effect identifiers. So let me come to Prajakta Hindlekar, who's the Director of Nursing and Chief Experience Officer at Breach Candy Hospital. When we look at healthcare, Prajakta, typically has been always an analog experience, right? But then comes the pandemic, and in a sense, we are seeing retailization of healthcare, where people who are so used to e-commerce, digital payments, they expect a healthcare experience, whether it's appointment booking, whether it's care during, being at the hospital, post-care, outside of hospital. They want a simple and streamlined and very effective experience. So to make all that happen, and considering yours is also a very highly regulated sector, how do you make sure that everyone in your company is working together to make sure that the patient is getting the sense that, this hospital really knows my needs and is able to deliver on those needs? Your thoughts on this?
Thank you very much for having me here. Very interesting conversation. So since you're asking about how do we all keep our teamwork together.
Sabka saath, sabka vikas. How does that happen?
But I think first I should just tell that in healthcare, patient experience is a different ballgame. There are 4 areas, so I would brief you on that first. First is, it is sum of interactions, and we have many teams in the hospital. Second is this, which is shaped by the organization culture. So you can't have a teamwork unless you have a good culture. And third, it is how the patient perceives you. And in India still, it's not only patient who is a customer, but also the family. So it's more challenging when we have patient and his family who is actually watching you, what you do. And the last, it's a continuum of care. So we meet them at various touch points. And it's not easy to capture every experience that they go through. So to have all teams together, what we do in our hospital or in my setup, we have a very rigorous way of capturing every interaction or experience. So we have around 1700 feedbacks per month, and we have a very personal interaction with our every customer. So in our hospital, everybody is a VIP. And I can proudly say that patients are our brand ambassadors and our employees are our brand ambassadors. So everybody have given few mnemonics. So in healthcare, we have 3 E's. Patient care, patient experience. I think over last 2 decades, Westerns have far ahead. And these 3 E's are, first is ease, which all of you I think spoke about. So we want to have ease for our patients, customers, families, because any healthcare event is not easy. It comes as a surprise. We have seen in the pandemic, people didn't know that they had some comorbidities, and that made COVID worse. So now people are more health conscious. They are moving towards well-being journey. So we want to have a ease, and definitely I think the technology will help us. Second E is effectiveness. So to be effective, I think fragmentation can occur in healthcare, and any drop or any loop not close will affect the decision. And not like products, we are with human beings. So I think it's a big no, and proactiveness comes with team at work and preventing those kind of adverse events, what we call them in healthcare. So communication is the key, because it's been vastly studied what happens when there is an adverse event. When we do RCA, root cause analysis, besides your clinical, communication also is in that triad. And of course, the leadership. So teamwork cannot be without a leadership who believes in every day making an exceptional experience for the customers. And last T is, of course, we are in the dealing with human beings, so it's all about emotions. And in fact, now various studies, various guidelines are coming up saying that we have to rehumanize healthcare. So that's what my take on customer experience. Thank you.
All right. 3 E's: ease, effectiveness, and emotions. And what's interesting is few of the healthcare providers that I spoke to, they also said that while healthcare mostly was looked at from a curative perspective, what the pandemic also did was, when the focus of CX became more evident, it also led to a lot of business for healthcare providers from a preventative aspect. Because you always look at hospital as the last resort, right? But what if you were proactive about your health and you went for regular checkups, tested yourself, and made sure that all signals are go? So they noticed that the preventive aspect actually drove business, and they also tuned their CX efforts accordingly. So it's great to see that 3 E's play a role in that. All right, let's sort of tie the knot on this conversational thread with Vijay Kumar, who's the CTO of Xanadu, which operates in the real estate space. You provide institutional sales and marketing solutions to real estate companies. So great to get a vantage point from your sector as well, especially in this context that we are talking about, because CX does wonders. We are in the CX world, but for those synergies to work, you need an effective cross-functional team. So to get your thoughts on this, into what are the best practices in your opinion to build cross-functional teams, both from a tech and from a human perspective. Your thoughts on that?
Thanks for having me here. So I will start with a little bit of background about why Xanadu exists. Traditionally in real estate, there used to be 2 sides of it. One was, in one side there used to be financial institutions, and another side is to be the developer community. Financial institution typically give funds to both consumer as well as to the developer community. In developer side of it, they had to deal with so much of issues, regulations, licensing, disputes, construction activity, that itself is a very complex sort of function. In this 2 end, nobody was taking care of the customer side of it. So Xanadu exists for serving the actual need of the customer, and we are the advocate of consumer side. So consumer and their interests are at the core of us. So bringing in the right consumer experience, starting from start of the journey till the delivery of the real estate. I mean, we deal with residential, commercial, plotted land, luxury, all sort of different sectors in the real estate side. Apart from real estate, we also deal with, as a group organization, we also deal with home loan, interior design and everything. So we kind of cater to.
So you have a mix of offerings, right? Some are you can have repeat customers, and some are I bought a home, I'm not going to see you again for the next 20 years. So
correct.
So how do you balance that?
Right. So since and then that typically the journey starts when somebody tries to buy a house, and then buying a house in India. And because of the ticket size of the property, typically it's not only a financial decision, it's also a very emotional decision. And people had to go through, selecting the right or understanding the consumer need, that whether he is the customer and what sort of properties you need to offer to them is itself is a very very emotional and involved decision, and a lot of people are involved. So and then typically journey starts from physical, digital, then it goes to physical, then again it becomes physical, and the cycle continues. So ensuring that this experience doesn't drop even if there are changes in the situation is very important, and that is what we are kind of building. And in the last couple of years we have built a lot of AI based applications, automations and everything to ensure that we ensure that right product and right sort of experience is provided to the end consumer.
All right. You provided me with the perfect segue, considering any conversation will be adhura, as they say, if we don't talk about AI. So far in this conversation, we've discussed where we are. And in the next part of the conversation, we will look at where we are going. Now, taking forward what you mentioned about AI, Ranjit, to bring you in this back again. AI has been integrated in contact centers, CRM solutions, and now, of course, we are in the Gen AI era. So the question is, where does that lead to, especially as a value driver for your organization? Because now new use cases are coming about. You've got sentiment analysis, real-time language translation, which works great, especially when you are trying to access different regions of Bharat. So your thoughts on the possibilities that Gen AI bring to the table?
So at NinjaCut itself, we have implemented a lot of new technologies. We are very heavily outbound-driven organization. A lot of calls goes to customers. But if you look at our quality assurance team, there's a quality assurance team in the CX team, right? I mean, they sample the conversations, what happening between the customer or the agent meeting the guidelines, what it's set. So normally the sampling is about 1 to 2%. Now we have implemented a speech analytics tool, so it does about 100% of our sampling. It tells us what our agents do wrong, what is a product, what is the most spoken word from our customers, what we have to look. Do we have to relook in our, on our FAQs? Do we have to relook at our, our bot breaking topics? We have implemented, bot solution in multiple platforms. One of the things which we always found it is the bot breaks. So most of the leaders which I've spoken is, they always said that, no, this product doesn't work for us. But actually it's not the real truth. You really have to look at the bot and you literally have to treat it like a baby and you have to train it. Why the bot is breaking, why it broke. Okay, strengthen it. And he will become a superhero. And he will not take sick leaves, he will not take that leave, this leave. So, and it's very cost efficient, to be very honest. And it creates also a wow experience to customers. The moment they get in, or their information is sorted, they are well good, right? I mean, they don't like, calling an IVR or calling. IVR is an old traditional method. Nobody likes. Even our farmers doesn't like an IVR. What is it? Don't play the robotic messages to us. That's what we hear from them. And I think that technology plays a very vital role, and a lot of personalization has to be done, and we also have to continuously monitor it. One of the best practice what we do in CX, apart from all the metrics what we measure, CSAT, NPS, your call duration, AST, service levels and everything, we always look into our topmost volume drivers. If our customers are happy, they will not call us. We always figure out why they're calling us, why the volume is hitting us. So we always try to solve that problem using our AI and all those technologies which exist.
And it's great to get these kind of examples out so the viewers also get a sense of, while we talk about these topics theoretically, what are companies who are at the forefront of innovation actually doing with these technology, and what sort of customer pain points are they looking to address. So I'll take this question from a customer facing and a company facing, company back-end perspective. So Ambika, from a customer facing viewpoint, when we look at Gen AI and the possibilities that it brings about, what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I think there's a very bright future that exists ahead of us with AI. In the recent past, right? I mean, it's a new technology, but it definitely is making the right news across, and everybody, right? I mean, all across, we will all agree that there is a lot of investment that is actually happening in the AI space, right? Now, if we look at self-serve, right? And one of the points that Ranjit mentioned, that the bot breaks, right? That used to actually happen very often. The training of the models used to actually take a lot of time. But now what we have actually seen with Gen AI capabilities coming in, and with augmented, and this getting augmented with natural language processing, we actually see that the human-like behavior that is expected out of the chatbots is getting delivered, right? Across all channels, across all languages that the users are coming in from, we are able to train the chatbots really well. We are able to deliver the human-like experience very well. And from a customer-facing perspective, I think the automation that is really happening, right, across all channels and all of that, and the ability to really communicate with the brand in the channel of choice with a human-like experience, which delivers value and does not disrupt the entire experience that a customer would like to have. That's really the experience that we have really seen coming in from Gen AI.
All right, let me take that forward and look at it from a back-end perspective. Arpit, as you mentioned, right, for your top 1% of customers, you want to provide them with that bespoke experience, but the relationship manager who's handling that customer, how do you see Gen AI supercharging that person's abilities to really know that customer? What is the magic that you see Gen AI playing on the back end? Because in the front end, we have seen a whole lot of possibilities emerge in terms of, say, optimizing supply chain management, or maybe broad basing language access. If your RM is really good in terms of handling humans, but there's a language barrier somewhere. Do you see those use cases becoming more prominent of Gen AI helping the back end, whereby then your RMs can really deliver value to their customers?
Absolutely. I think if an organization wants an enriched AI experience, there are 3 areas to look at. One is the whole shopper assistance or your customer assistance from a buying standpoint or personalization standpoint. Second is the self-serve aspect. And third is the agent aspect. Now, talking about the buying assistance or the shopper assistance, AI can help you deliver a lot of personalized experience from the perspective of where the customer is in their life cycle journey and what kind of recommendations or support they're looking at. A typical shopper would probably look at communications around personalized offers, what is the best deal that they can get at a different time of the year. A regular shopper who is also an H&I buyer, they might be looking for a lot of assistance on the buying side. As I said, they want recommendations because they don't want to read about the trends all the time. What they want is, if I have an RM, if I have a name and a face to go to, the person should simply just come and tell me, hey, these are the new trends, these are the trend setters, why don't you explore those kind of products? So AI is helping us curate those kind of experiences where customers are getting notifications about the offers, customer getting notifications about the abandoned carts, customers are getting notifications about the trendsetters, that this is a new product in the market, would like to explore. And when a customer wants to know more about those, they can always reach out to an RM, and with AI having curated most of it, the RM can just simply plug more information and give a superlative experience to a customer.
All right, I'll get Ambika's response to that on the back end side, but let's also not forget that the Indian customer is really smart, especially on the abandoned cart issue, right? Sometimes it is that they speak to each other in a forum and say, hey, don't buy that product, put it in your cart, leave it for 2 days, delete it, and then the company will send you an offer. All right. taking forward that conversation, Ambika, in terms of the possibilities that Gen AI brings to the table from a back-end perspective. What would you have to say?
Sure. So, backend are like primarily two things, right? I mean, for any businesses, from a customer experience perspective, the backend is, your agents, right? I mean, how do you really supercharge your agent productivity? How do you ensure that the amount of time that your agents are spending in terms of solving for the repetitive task is reduced, and you're able to give them the context, the 360-degree view that we actually spoke about, the every single information about the customer to ensure that they are able to provide that personalized experience back to your customer. How do we really do that, right? And Gen AI has been very, very helpful in terms of introducing us to technologies like auto-summarizing the entire conversation, right? There is seamless collaboration that has to happen between the agent and the internal teams in order to ensure that we are able to get to a resolution much faster. Now, auto-summarizing this entire communication and, just by a click of a button is something that AI is actually helping us with. Also rephrasing, right? I mean, again, the customers, there are different kinds of customers who are actually engaging with the agents, and then instead of spending a lot of time training your agents in terms of adopting well to really have the right communication tone, the tonalities, the sentiment analysis, and all of those things actually play a very critical role. So it becomes, AI is actually also helping us just with the click of buttons, how an agent can have an effective communication with your customers is also another thing that Gen AI is helping us. And then apart from this, I think all of this is possible when we are able to churn a huge amount of data coming across 11 different applications or 18 different applications which are really getting that information onto your CDP. How do we really churn a lot of this data in order to provide that meaningful insights to your decision makers and your leaders is also something which is very, very critical, and that's where Gen AI is coming into play.
All right. While we've spoken a lot about the possibilities, I also want to kind of temper the conversation, bring in the aspect of risk, and get a representative from a highly regulated sector. So, Jagjit, I'll look at you, and Jalpa, I'll come to you. I understand the sentiment that we are also regulated. Don't forget us. All right. Jagjit, to get your viewpoint and then Jalpa's, we talk about this blending of self-serve tools with the human agents, and of course it works, then it's great, helps CX, NPS scores all go up. But there will also be, for regulated sectors, it will also be a question of risk. How do you sort of maintain that balance between the human and technological aspects? So what would you have to say about that? How do you temper yourself to use AI in a highly regulated environment?
Yeah. So basically, see, in healthcare, as I said, the escalations are very, very risky for you. So, and the human face is the most important part for you. But how do you prioritize? How do you prioritize that, okay, this customer should be reached first? Because all the escalations are important for the customer, but as a provider, you are always on the limited resources. You're always thinking about, okay, what to do next? So in that case, I think tech helps a lot. Tech basically removes the clutter. It prioritizes that, okay, this case needs more importance. And then your agent, the final face, gets the case which he exactly needs. And on the other side, once someone is at home, in healthcare, you can't be reactive. You'll have to be very, very proactive. So if something is happening at home, how do you see that, okay, the triggers are coming? Which can't be done by the nurse at home, the doctor at home. But the system, the technology which is always observing it, I think that will be the right resource. So before something happens and the customer calls you, your system or your technology tells you, okay, this is going to happen. This doesn't look right. There are triggers which might be a problem for you. And the problems in healthcare are very, very tricky. So that, I think there is the main connect where the technology actually keeps you very risk-free, I'll say, very prepared for whatever is coming. Yeah, so largely this.
All right. So Jalpa, let me couch that question not in a boilerplate way, when we talk about data privacy and security. So in fact, I want to approach data and risk from the perspective of value, right? If I am a customer and I'm providing data to you, let's say as an insurer, I expect to see a certain value in return. Right. Because we are also in a world where it's gone from third-party cookies to first-party cookies to no cookies at all. So which means your data initiatives need to be robust, where the customer is willing to give you data knowing this is the value that they will get. So from that value proposition perspective, how do you make sure that you've got all your checks, all your ducks in a row, as they say? And as a follow-on question, is self-serve combined with analytics going to be the future of CX? What's your thought on this?
So, picking the first thing first, with the DPDP Act coming in, there are a lot of things which are going to be much more stringent. And especially when you take care of health insurance, there's a lot of private data which the customers are really concerned about of not even sharing. There are things where they do not want to share certain information with their family members as well. So that is where it brings in a lot of confidentiality and the trust factor from the customer perspective. So there are assurances which are given to the customers. There are proper tools, evaluation of a partner, evaluation of anything where your data is served, what is the kind of data which is exposed to which set of people, those things are taken care of. And thereby...
You see new products, I mean, as we mentioned when we are speaking to project, the fact that preventative is becoming a big aspect of healthcare. Now, if I am more open in terms of the data that I share with you, and you come up with new insurance offers, let's say, I'm just giving an example, tweak to that. So there is a fulfillment of my use case, and it has given you a new, say, line of business. Do you think that it's going to be more interesting now for insurers?
It already has become. For example, if you see the health insurance industry, I'll pick health as an example over here. There are a lot of things which comes to you. For example, the number of steps you take. If that data is getting shared with the help
you work with your tech providers to make sure that data is...
So now that I can create a predictive product saying that yes, this person is active, and I can create products saying that yes, I can offer you 30% discount, or these are some of the things which can be offered. Similar way, health checkup is one of the piece as a part of insurance. So we get a lot of data over there, and based on the data which is come in, the product can be customized, and we are kind of proactively prepared with those data saying that what is next which is going to come to each of the customers.
Let me take a sort of slight detour in this conversation, because it's also about, while we talk about these wonderful possibilities, we, at the end of the day, all of us also have to look at the profitability aspect. While we look at customer experience and experience-led growth as being the necessary driver for our enterprises, the question will also be, all these initiatives that we're doing, what is the ROI, right? So maybe we can get both of you to comment on that. Would you like to state a point, Jalpa, on the ROI? When you think about CX initiatives, how does the ROI conversation go about?
So when it comes to return on investment, actually you're not calculating any return of investment, especially in the tech front, for the same year. You actually calculate it for a longer period of time, right? And any conversation which is on a positive note with the customer is going to give you a long-term thing.
All right. Preetham, your thoughts on this, because when we look at ROI, right, it's technically the gold standard in measurement, but if I look at it, does it fully measure the success of a CX initiative? Because sometimes it can happen that I'm a customer, I've had an interaction with the brand, a good interaction, I didn't buy anything necessarily, but I had a good interaction, which means I could come back and have a purchase. But the problem is, if you have a very myopic view on data, you're thinking, oh, I lost a customer, or I churned out a potential customer. So how do you measure return on investment the right way? What are your thoughts on this?
All right, so it depends on how you want to look at CX efforts, right? A lot of times you look at it at the performance layer. That means you're looking at immediate returns, and that's actually unfortunate, because while 60% of the time it will give you an immediate return to a certain extent, the remaining 40% of the time you will notice that it actually has a long-term effect. And so measuring that over a CLTV of at least a minimum of 3 years would become important, because then you can justify the ROI associated with it. At its core, brands are about services. And if you look at it from a brand lens, that means you're looking at the top of the funnel, which is, it's not just about reach, it's about engagement and interaction. Then you'll notice that it needs to go more into your CapEx line and not your OpEx line in order to simplify it. And I think that's what would justify the investment, because everything that you do from a brand lens, especially a brand customer experience, has to go to CapEx line, because it is a long-term build that you're doing for the brand. And that's, I think, is key. So then when you have those ratios, and I'm not saying fixed to the 60-40 ratio, you could flip it any way you want, or you could use a different ratio, but whatever is that ratio for your industry sector, just keep that in mind and then measure that over that period of 3 to 5 years. And of course, it does come in conflict with the average tenure of a CMO, which seems to be less than 3 years, but I think somebody needs to hold that in that at least a minimum 3 to 5 year time span in order to measure the ROI.
But then how do you achieve granularity? Because these are also incremental modifications which come about, right? It's not like you have a plan always as to how things are going to pan out. And from a CX perspective, things evolve quite rapidly. And as you mentioned, the CMO is going to last for the entire 5 years or 10 years when this entire process is supposed to organically go forward. So how do you balance granularity with the value? Because you will want more data sort of helping you build the small momentum wins, right? Because that's how the use case gets built among the shareholders, saying, hey, we're doing these things. It's working with customers. Let's invest more. Let's do that more. But that granularity is required. So how do you make sure that you've got the granularity aspect right?
So the challenge is most people go towards macro analysis and you build a narrative around that. The intent is to actually deep dive, which means micro analysis through right inciting becomes key. Because if you don't build a narrative around the right insights, then you're not going to tell the right story. So the narrative completely flips. So it's the responsibility of the CX team and the marketing team to ensure that the narratives are put through in that context. And most of the time, defaulting to just macro analysis just defeats the purpose to a large extent. The second thing always to keep in mind is, and one of the things, because we're discussing Gen AI, is I don't think I have at least, and most of the time I've done intensive research on this, is the fact that we haven't brought the brand context into the Gen AI conversation. Gen AI is trained on large language models, which means it defaults to the average. And the problem is it doesn't bring the customization and the context and the purpose of the brand into the conversation. So what happens is you could be talking to a Gen AI tool in one insurtech platform versus the other, and they kind of sound similar. And that's scary because you haven't really trained it within
the experience.
It does, because then how do I know that I'm connecting with a brand versus another brand? That's one. The second thing, and we have to keep this in mind, that the only delta that you have is obviously the profit or the margins that you get, and that's a brand delta. It's very simple. I mean, 100 years of research which says that the delta to your bottom line is going to be because of brand growth. So how do you always hold that? Because it's not just about the revenue growth, but also the bottom line. And that eventually will default to brand, both in the short term and the long term as investments.
All right. Vimal, let me get your thoughts on this, achieving granularity when it comes to ROI, measuring ROI. And the example is, when you focus on measurements are, related directly to user experience versus, say, optimizing costs on cloud behavior, right? So the idea is, how do you make sure you're not missing the woods for the trees, especially when it comes to ROI of CX? Your thoughts on this?
So I'll continue what he has said actually. Like the combination of IT and the marketing is not equal to actually nowadays is the ROI. When we talk about the ROI is maybe nowadays it is ROX. Right, return on experience. So we are talking about the CX in each and every industry, right? We are into a customer-centric approach. Everyone is actually implementing customer-centric approach. In each industry, we are tagging one particular customer as a golden record, the golden star. This is VIP customer. But for me, is that particular customer is a VIP? That's still a question mark, because that particular customer is never came back to me for the service once the product is purchased, right? So what we need to do over here is like, invest on the return on experience always, instead of calculating the investment, which I have done it on the cost basis. Correct? And how you will be able to do this? Because each customer life cycle journey is connected with some dotted lines. Each dotted lines are having actually the emotions. Each emotions can be tracked in terms of a measurement. Now, measurements can be done with respect to the feedback loop mechanisms, right? The CS, CSAT or the NPS, which he has talked about, right? So it's not only the long-term or the short-term kind of an CLV which we are going to be achieving. It's kind of an each customer journey with the emotions connected to each other, and then we look about like, am I doing a right investment, making sure that the customer experience, the feedback mechanism is actually reaching to the peak when I do kind of an investment around it.
All right. Now, as we come to the last leg of this conversation and really looking at the way things were and the way things should be, let me get our final three panelists to comment on, how would businesses invest in experience differently? Because according to, I think an Accenture report, becoming a business of experience is not about investing anymore. It's about investing differently. That's what they've said. So the question is, in 5 years, how do you all see your businesses investing differently, especially when experience-led growth comes into the picture? Your thoughts?
So I think, these days these technologies are very, very well available. And with time, it will become cost efficient also. So the ROI and ROX that we are talking about will obviously be out of the way. But what do we do differently? We'll have to go back to what we used to do. Back to the basics, because everyone will have this technology. When we used to have separate organizations, so there were 4-5 players in our sector. So it's like we used to buy a chair from one vendor. The other person goes to the company B and say that I've sold 2,000 chairs to PVR and it's extremely comfortable. Their consumers are loving it. Why don't you take it? This is obviously, I will take it also. So this is one. I have built a super luxury outlet in Bombay. And this is the kind of lighting that we have done there. This is the kind of sound that we have done there.
Or maybe you could enter the furniture business, right?
Copy.
If you have a sort of pop-up store and say you've seen this movie, in case you want to recreate that same room, you can visit our.
We have big
premises.
players in already. So I think we'll have to go back to the same theory that technology will continue to evolve. The ROI and ROX will be taken care of with time. However, the consistency in delivering those experiences when it comes to a non-transactional problem will still be dealt with a lot of emotions, with a lot of customer and the associate or someone servicing him one-on-one in the company. The human will continue to play a very unique role in this transformation, while all the transaction-led, all the straightforward answers can be given by the machine. But when it comes to dealing with unfortunate incidents or where the consumer is at loss or at a mental loss sometime, human needs to come and console.
The context of that conversation will determine whether a human or an AI bot. All right, let's tie up some loose ends on this conversation. Prajakta, your thoughts on how the healthcare business is going to look like in the next 5 years, especially as we have been talking about experience and AI?
I think now people are looking at wow experience even in healthcare. So I would put it in phase. That's a mnemonic. First is focus, and entire focus has to be on patients. So technology can help us, giving them more time by having electronic health records, real-time data, so that when there are a patient having several consultants looking at him, everything is available, even for the front line. Like Western world where I worked, we had everything available and we didn't have to struggle with asking same questions again and again. So that focus will help. And second, A is accountability. I think teams have to be accountable in healthcare because there are certain events are identified as no events or zero tolerance. So accountability is the key, and that will bring wow, that everybody was accountable. They owned what didn't go that well. And the C is for commitment, yes, because it's again a culture. Every employee has to be committed to create that wow or delightful patient experience. And last, E is engagement. I think every forum we go in healthcare, everybody is talking about partnership, engagement of patients. Because even in healthcare, lot of uncertainty, complexity. Despite of that, patient would like to have their own remote control. I think engaging them will bring better results, and people are moving, listening to voices of patients or something now what has come in by the Patient Experience Institute is lived experiences. So we have to listen to their stories and then make a customized plan.
So, all right, Vijay, let me come to you for the real estate perspective, the sectoral perspective on the possibilities the next 5 years, especially when we talk about investing, right? When we talk about investing for CX, how does the picture look
So
like?
typically, real estate has been not at the forefront of technology, but this sector is rapidly catching up, and we are enabling lot of technology-backed solution to increase the experience of the customer and give a immersive experience to the customer. Now since the technology and GenAI has come in, there are a lot of new innovation which are happening, which are very human-like. So when you're talking to the to the IVR, you will not recognize whether you are talking to a human or to a machine. At least initial level of the discussion can be done via that, and that is it is coming in a very near future. So and from technology standpoint, we are investing heavily in terms of providing the right experience, right information. We are enabling our sales managers. As an stakeholders, we work with a lot of channel partners. We work with, from a stakeholders point of view, we have our internal, as he said, our internal agents or internal sales managers. From a consumer point of view, we have end customers. We interact a lot with the developer are our client, and we work with a varied number of channel partners. So experience at each of them and at each level is very important, and technology is obviously going to tie all this thing together. Is what I look for. I mean, that is what my expectation is, and technology is going to grow. GenAI is obviously changing the landscape very rapidly. We expect that both human as well as machine transference will be very seamless in coming future.
All right, we are talking about the power of the bots, but when I look at myself as a media anchor, I'm also a learning algorithm whereby the power of these conversations help me raise the bar in terms of the talking points that we have, and we are already seeing AI anchors enter the fray. So hopefully we keep raising the bar and make sure that the humans, they keep beating the artificial intelligence in terms of the value that we bring to the table for our viewers. All right, we're almost out of time. So Ambika, let me come to you for the last word. Just summarizing what we have discussed so far, the new CX, as businesses look forward on this experience-led growth paradigm, how are they going to be investing differently when they're investing in the business of experience and not just products and services? The last word from you.
Sure. So, I mean, I will probably have to understand the question that...
business of experience, the fact that you're now investing in customer experience and not just products or services. How do you think in 5 years our conversation is going to be different? What are your thoughts on this?
So the good part is that I think the healthy discussion that we actually had with everyone today, all of us really are coming to this conclusion that customer experience is not a team. Customer experience gets tied at every level of engagement that you actually have with the customer, right? Marketing is across all the phases, whether it is the P's or we talk about the C's. I think the customer experience is very, very pivotal in terms of ensuring that you're able to build that brand, you're able to build that loyalty, you're able to build that experience that will attract the customer to consider you over and above the experience or the purchase that the customer is actually doing at that given point in time, right? So this is definitely investment that everybody does, and hence I would actually call it as this is not a product or a service that you're actually buying, but this is an experience that you're actually buying to ensure that you have happy customers.
Absolutely. As they say, if the customer comes first, the customer will last. So as businesses, we have to make sure that the experience is so great that the wow factor turns those customers into fans. On that note, it's a wrap here on Forbes India presents Freshworks Tech Tech Shots, the new CX, where we have been talking about the future of customer service. I'd like to thank all of the leaders who've joined in on this panel and shared their insights and stories from the trenches, as I call it, in understanding what makes you, the viewer, you, the customer, tick, and of course, making sure that there is a loyal relationship. And on that note, thank you so much to our viewers for tuning in. Till next time, this is your host, Gautam Srinivasan, signing off. Have a great day.
Forbes India presents Freshworks Tech Shots, the new CX.